So I'm planning on titling this video something clickbaity like The Punisher, one of the best comic book games. However, if you ask me what my favorite superhero game is, it'd be Batman Arkham City, which sets a bar that probably no game will ever beat for me. But I do have a reason for the name that I'll get into in a minute. The Punisher game was made by Volition, who made Saints Row 3, and The Punisher actually kind of plays like that game. It came out in 2005, a year after the movie came out, and when I initially looked into the game, I saw something that said that the game was a loose adaptation of the movie, which might be the most insane thing I've ever heard. The only connections between the two I can think of are that one level of the game, Castle's apartment, is basically a scene ripped straight out of the movie, and the main villain Jigsaw's backstory kind of lines up with the ending of the movie. I'm not going to talk about the movie though, so why do I think this game is such a great comic book game? Because the game's story literally feels like a comic book. You have other Marvel heroes like Black Widow, Nick Fury, Daredevil, and Iron Man just kind of pop in and pop right back out, and it's kind of the same with the villains of the game. It feels like a comic book run where Punisher essentially fights villains of the week until finding out towards the end of it that the villains were all connected somehow. Furthermore, if you turn on captions, they're literally in little comic bubbles. Frank will also have these flashbacks while you torture people of various panels from the comics.
I'm only a soldier.
That's no excuse.
It's cool, I like it. But first let's talk about the gameplay of the Punisher.
It's the Punisher!
So, being the Punisher, it's a third-person shooter game, although keep in mind that 2005 was long before the universal shooter control scheme had been decided on. So there's a little weirdness like pressing R3 to enter precision mode, which kind of puts you into RE4 aiming mode, but luckily the game does not have tank controls. I emulated the PS2 version of this game on PCSX2, but there is a PC version you can find online. It just doesn't have built-in controller support, which is definitely the best way to play this game in my opinion. Frank has a primary weapon and a secondary, and you can actually dual wield both of those. While you're not dual wielding, L1 allows you to throw a grenade, but when you do grab a second weapon, that becomes the button to shoot the second gun. The coolest part about this is that, bear with me here, this is going to sound a little weird, but the bullets actually come out of the gun. So for example, if an enemy is holding a hostage on their left side, you can't shoot at them with your right gun because then the bullet goes straight into the hostage. You have to use your left one. This also comes up a lot when you're taking cover, like if you're hiding behind a pillar and pop out on the right side, your left gun is still pointing at the pillar, so you can actually only use your right one. It sounds stupid, but I thought it was kinda sick. Anyway, when it comes to dual wielding, you can always dual wield two secondaries, although whenever Frank reloads them, he just kinda tosses them away and pulls out all new guns. With primaries, you can dual wield most of them, even the giant LMGs, but you can only keep one. Once one of the guns runs out of ammo, Frank tosses it away. This is another really weird thing for me to like, but it doesn't matter which gun runs out of ammo, Frank will always throw away that one in favor of the one that has bullets in it. So you never grow attached to a gun, they're just tools in the Punisher's arsenal, and once they're no longer useful, he throws them away. Again, I'm weird, I like these kind of things. Besides guns, there are also melee weapons scattered around the world which allow you to do special quick kills. When you get close to an enemy, if you press square, Frank kills them in an animation, sometimes with a knife, sometimes with his guns, and sometimes he just kinda hits them. Now keep in mind as we talk about the next mechanic that this game is about the Punisher, a guy with a gun. He has no superpowers. Well, Frank can enter slaughter mode, where he becomes completely immune to damage and slowly regenerates health. In this mode you can't use guns, your L1 and R1 are replaced with knife throws. The main use for this mode is when you're about to die, you pop it, then run around quick killing enemies while you're invincible. It sounds overpowered, but really you only get a full slaughter mode meter once per level, so it's more like a get out of jail free card. You can also grab enemies and do a quick kill from there, or drag them over to these orange spots on the ground to do special environmental kills. My favorite of these is sacrificing someone on an ancient Aztec shrine.
The heart of the Aztec temple was the sacrificial altar. Here, the Aztec elite ritualistically slaughtered their enemies, whose only crime was being outsiders. The victims were placed across the altar and their hearts were cut out as their blood flowed over the stone.
You can also feed them to snakes or throw them into various machines. Special kills are actually kinda rare. What's much more common are special interrogations. The only other way to regenerate health is to interrogate enemies. Whenever Frank breaks an enemy, which means getting them to tell you information, he heals either a little bit or a lot depending on whether the enemy actually knows anything of use or not, signified by this little white Punisher skull over their head. What these guys tell you ranges from locations of secret weapon stashes, story-related things, or sometimes they'll offer to help you if you let them go. That usually takes the form of them telling the rest of the enemies you're gone or that you're somewhere else, or sometimes opening certain doors for you, allowing you to flank the rest of the enemies. Interrogations can also reveal certain things about characters Frank previously thought innocent. So you can't kill innocents in this game. They include just normal bystanders, average salary employees, and that kind of thing. Well, there's two examples where people Frank thought innocent turn out not to be if you interrogate the right enemy. One happens with this guy locked in a cage in a mob boss's basement. Frank assumes he's an innocent unless you interrogate an enemy and learn that he's in that cage.
Why is that guy locked in the cage?
None of your damn business. He sold heroin to Law's granddaughter.
Because he dealt drugs to a mob boss's granddaughter, and you then have the chance to kill him.
Thanks, man.
Not so fast. Heard you sell drugs.
Oh shit, no. Please!
In another level, Punisher meets a zoo security guard who only lets him through a gate if he kills all the enemies in an area. Punisher is annoyed at that, but he still considers the guy an innocent until you interrogate an enemy to learn that they paid the guy to stall you at the gate to give them more time to kill the rest of the security guards. You can then interrogate him and he pleads to you that the mob threatened his wife.
What you talking about? You're crazy. Let me go! He said he was gonna kill my wife. Please don't kill me! He's lying. He's not married.
But if you save those security guards, they'll tell you that he doesn't have a wife. Anyway, there are 4 basic interrogation methods: choking, which is the easiest, punching, gun tension, and face smash. When you interrogate an enemy, you basically press up on the joystick to increase tension and down to relieve it, kind of. So for punching, for example, pressing up is to connect the punch and down is to wind up. To break an enemy, you need to keep their stress meter within this orange range for 3 seconds without killing them. With choking, it's super easy, but with other ones, you basically have to just fake them out over and over. The 4 basic techniques are all very easy, however in every level there's a whole range of special interrogations for you to use. These are usually threatening an enemy with extremely brutal death, and some of them are actually really hard to do without just killing them, like this wood chipper one. Special interrogations and kills all give you extra points, which at the end of the level decides what medal you earned, and you can also spend them on upgrades. The weird thing about interrogations though is that if you kill an enemy during an interrogation, you lose points, even after you break them, so you're discouraged from feeding people to sharks or shoving them in furnaces. However, if you just stop the interrogation and quick kill them afterwards, you gain points anyway. The main way to get points is to rack up kills without being hit, which interrupts your streak. It's not quite like Devil May Cry or whatever, where you see a letter in the top of the screen, but when you reach a certain score threshold, let's just say 500, a couple kills later, while adding to that initial 500 amount, you'll now see a ×2 next to it. A couple more and it'll be ×3, and so on. When you get hit, that gets added to the overall score and you need to restart from the beginning. The first few levels are actually really easy, even on hard difficulty, and that's mainly because enemies can't aim for shit. However, after that, not getting hit requires you to pull out some guerrilla tactics. I said this before, but your score determines what medals you unlock once you finish the level: gold, silver, or bronze. Bronze unlocks challenge mode, which lets you replay a certain part of the level with a new objective, like kill a boss with only headshots, or perform a certain amount of interrogations. A silver medal unlocks punishment mode, which is an infinite enemy mode set in a certain part of the level. A gold medal unlocks a cheat that you can use, but I only earned like 1 gold medal over my 2 playthroughs, so I can't tell you much about those. As I already mentioned, you can buy upgrades with the score you get at the end of levels. Most of the basic upgrades start off cheap but quickly get into the hundreds of thousands, so you'd have to grind to actually get them. The first upgrade is body armor, which increases your health. Next is kill recovery, which allows you to heal when you kill an enemy, and also costs 400,000. Longer slaughter mode does exactly what you think, so does increase accuracy and increase ammo and grenade capacity. There's 3 similar upgrades: attach grenade launcher, which is kinda useless, attach silencer, which will reduce the range enemies detect you at. This game doesn't really have a stealth system, but you can catch enemies off guard pretty easily. It's actually surprising how little they care that there was a massive firefight like 2 rooms over from them. There's also one to attach a scope, but I actually think having a scope on weapons is a downside if they're not the sniper rifle. Finally, you can increase magazine size with a one-time upgrade of 80,000. As for the weapons in this game, the guns in this game are named after what caliber they shoot, but I'm not saying all that. I'm gonna go in the order you find them. You first unlock a pump-action shotgun. It's fine but drops off damage at like 10 feet away. Next you unlock an M16, and it's probably the most solid weapon in the game. Good accuracy, decent damage, and you can buy an upgrade to attach a grenade launcher, which as I already said is super useless. Next you have the MP5, which is also just fine, but completely outclassed by the later SMG in the game. After that you get the only LMG in the game, which is an amazing weapon, you just can't enter aiming mode with it, but if you can actually hit enemies with it, it's great. After that you can get the AK-47, which is more or less a complete upgrade from the M16. That's also when you find the P90, which is probably my favorite weapon in the game. It has crazy accuracy, 50 bullets per mag, and it absolutely melts enemies. Rarely you can find a sniper rifle, which is only really useful in certain situations, but it's alright. After that you get the futuristic rifle, which weirdly has 2 magazines of different sizes, so maybe it uses 2 different kind of bullets. It's alright, but it has a sniper scope on it, which is rarely useful, so honestly it just gets in the way. At a couple points you can find a flamethrower, but it's honestly probably the worst weapon in the game. I mean, it immediately disables enemies by, like, you know, lighting them on fire, causing them to run around screaming, but it actually doesn't work on armored enemies, which is really the only use I could see for it. Finally, for regular weapons is the semi-auto shotgun, which is really good, but also super rare, so you can never really find ammo for it. There's also a grenade and rocket launcher, but similar to the sniper, those only really have a couple use cases. The first secondary you unlock is the 1911. It's fine, I guess. All of the secondaries share the aspect of having insane accuracy. The next one's a revolver, which does more damage, but of course only has 6 shots. There's the Uzi, which is really good, as they have a super fast firing rate while still being very accurate for single shots. You then have the machine pistols, which are just a better version of the Uzi, the hand cannon, which is the same for the revolver, and the Desert Eagle, which is an upgrade over the 1911s. Generally, when it comes to secondaries, I always prefer the automatic ones because their single shot accuracy is so high, and they can melt enemies in seconds at close range. Given that this is the Punisher, you're not going to be fighting demons and vampires and shit. The main way enemy difficulty increases throughout the game is by increasing their accuracy and overall AI intelligence. The first few levels have you fighting crackheads and mafia guys, both of which have terrible accuracy. You can basically walk right up to them for a quick kill without them even landing a hit on you. After that though, the difficulty rises pretty steeply. There are only 3 difficulties in this game: easy, normal, and hard. And I thought normal was pretty easy, so I didn't even try easy mode, but hard actually gets super difficult towards the end. Even on hard, the mafia guys can't really hit shit, but after them you fight Russian mercs, and they are a vast improvement. They have better weapons like the P90 and AK over the Uzi and M16, but again the main improvement is their AI. After them you have one level with these fist guys, but I'm pretty sure they share the same AI as the Russians. After that though, holy shit man, you fight the Yakuza. Now the basic Yakuza, the guy wearing suits, aren't too hard. Every basic human enemy in this game dies to a single headshot and a few body shots, the only exception are the fat Yakuza. However, the real threat from the Yakuza are the black and white armor elites. Both of them have helmets, which means they take 2 headshots now, one to knock off the helmet and then one actual headshot. Black armor elites still take a little damage to the body, so you can still kill them pretty easily just by spraying. However, white armor elites take no damage to the body. These guys will press you too. They do die to a single quick kill, but doing a quick kill on a crowd of enemies leaves you very open to attack. However, there's one downside to wearing full body armor, and that is that the Punisher can take any enemy as a human shield. When an enemy gets close enough, you can press X, which is also how you initiate an interrogation. If you don't interrogate them though, you have free reign to use them as a shield for as long as you like. Normal enemies will get killed by their boys pretty quickly, but white armor elites, especially if they still have the helmet on, you're basically invincible from the front with one of these guys in your hands. However, Yakuza and mercs are smarter too, and they love to flank you, so even with the human shield you need to be careful. Enemies can actually run out of ammo, at which point they'll run to a dead body to grab a new gun or call to their allies to toss them some more. You can actually initiate this process by shooting the gun out of their hands, which I usually did unintentionally.
So, Bullseye failed me again.
Tossed him out the window.
You're planning the same fate for me?
No, you would have to roll.
The Punisher has 9 bosses in it, technically 8, but you fight one of them twice. First is Bobby Nucci on level 3. This is your introduction to enemies with body armor, as you can only shoot Bobby in the head. It's very easy though because Bobby is alone, which is very rare for boss fights in this game, and all he really does is hide behind a couch trading shots with you. 2 levels later we get to fight Bobby's brother Eddie Nucci, and this time however he's not in a tiny office hiding behind a couch and is instead running around a pretty big arena in an attic. Eddie himself isn't much of a threat, but this fight has a ton of additional enemies, which I'm going to call ads from now on. When it comes to this game, there's a very obvious reason why ads are needed in boss fights, as if you run out of ammo you can get more from them or take their gun. However, you also have to remember that enemies are basically health packs to the Punisher, if you can manage to interrogate them. This boss fight isn't hard either, but it does take a minute because all Eddie does during the fight is run around. Next on level 6 we get my favorite boss fight, Bushwhacker. So if somehow you don't know who the super popular and mainstream character Bushwhacker is, he's a guy with a gun built into his arm. They went with a more gnarly look for his arm in this game, but honestly I don't know which one looks weirder, this one or another one from the comics. Let me know in the comments. Either way, if you interrogate an enemy near the fight, you learn the Bushwhacker just underwent eye surgery a couple days prior. So if you shoot off his glasses, you can then use flashbangs to stun him. I think that's how it works anyway. Bushwhacker's main form of attack is just shooting at you with his arm gun, but he can also shoot missiles out of it. One of the most interesting things Bushwhacker does is that he'll grab enemies around the arena and use them as human shields just like you can. This fight is my favorite because it's just a straight up shootout against a guy with a gun arm. There's no gimmicks or special ways to damage a Bushwhacker, you just have to be better than him. On the next level is a boss fight against a tank. And this one would be hard if they didn't give you a grenade launcher and plenty of cover to use to avoid the tank shots. In fact, all you have to do is hide behind enough layers of cover that you can destroy the tank with grenades before it can even shoot through your cover. Next on level 9 is the first boss fight against the Russian, a giant Russian guy who's bulletproof and has super strength. He's always calling Frank Big Boy, which is honestly kind of funny.
Hello, big boy.
I decided to look up the Russian on Google to see if he has a backstory or anything, but what I found is that apparently after Punisher kills the Russian in the comics, he gets revived and given hormones that give him breasts and a menstrual cycle. Like, what the hell? Anyway, this fight is basically a gimmick, but it's fun, so I'll give it a pass. Frank is unarmed and can't really fight the Russians, so what you have to do is wait for him to do this overhead attack, then grab onto his back and lead him to a special kill spot. The first one has Frank slamming the Russian's head in his fridge door. The Russian then throws Frank through the wall into his neighbor's house. Then you slam him into 3 separate computer monitors, get pushed through another wall, then throw him into a TV and then out the window. We get to fight Big Boy again on the next level, Grand Nixon Island, and this is easily the worst boss fight in the game. So stage 1 of the Russian has him up on this catwalk throwing explosive barrels at you. He's bulletproof, so the only way to damage him is to shoot the barrels in the second between when he lights them and when he actually throws them at you. This stage is actually super easy because you can go hide in these side rooms the Russian can't hit you. It's not like he's going to come down from there. Now the main problem with this fight are the ads. They spawn 2 at a time on either side of the arena, but these guys are Russian mercs, not mafia soldiers, which as I already said means that they can actually aim. So these guys will melt you unless you deal with them, which in the first stage is easy. In fact, the way I beat this fight on hard mode is by spending the first stage hiding in a back room where the Russian couldn't get me, and farming interrogations on the ads to get to full health. Second stage Russian is where this becomes a big problem. So when you get him to about half health, the Russian lights on fire and jumps down into the arena to chase you around. He actually runs pretty fast, and if he catches you, you're taking big damage. You also have no time to interrogate enemies now since the Russian is on your ass constantly, but make no mistake, the enemies are still there, and they're an even bigger threat than the Russian himself. The only way to damage him now is to lure the Russian to the explosive barrels scattered around the edges of the arena. But you can't just shoot them when he's near, because first you need the Russian to light them on fire by running past them. I honestly just alternated between 2 of these barrels because I knew the Russian would run by them. You have to do this so many times, and if you die at any point you go all the way back to phase 1. In conclusion, Russian 2 sucks. On the next level, Fisk Industries, you have to fight Bullseye a couple times. Bullseye is basically a guy who has such good aim he can turn any object into a lethal weapon just by throwing it. In your first encounter with him he just throws knives, but if they hit you they do pretty crazy damage. Just like the Nuchis, Bullseye is wearing a bulletproof suit, meaning you can only shoot his big bald head. It's a lot harder than the Nuchis though because this guy is constantly rolling and jumping around. You have to fight Bullseye off twice before the final battle against him inside Kingpin's office, where he pulls out a gun. When he has his gun out you just have to hide as bullets are a lot harder to dodge than knives. This final fight is pretty easy to cheese though because in the corner of the room is an infinitely respawning supply of grenades, so all you really have to do is hide behind a pillar, throw a grenade, grab another one while Bullseye is recovering, and repeat until he's dead. Unfortunately you don't get to fight Kingpin himself, but 2 levels later on Stark Industries you have to fight a helicopter. This is basically just a more advanced version of the tank battle. You have way less cover this time and the only way to damage the chopper is with the provided rocket launcher. You have infinite ammo for it, but the ammo is right out in the middle of the arena. Above you is a perch with a respawning set of snipers, and behind you is a door where the occasional white armor Yakuza will appear. It's pretty fun honestly, but not too hard if you just hide in this back part where you're out of the sniper's field of view. Finally, on the 16th and final level, Rikers Island, we fight Jigsaw in an Iron Man suit stolen from Stark Industries. Unfortunately, this fight also isn't really that good, although it's still a masterpiece compared to the Russian. So in the first stage, Jigsaw is floating with a jetpack that you have to shoot down in order to damage him. He has 2 attacks, one where he shoots 2 homing missiles at you, and one where he sprays little energy orbs at you. This would actually be super difficult if you couldn't just run directly under Jigsaw and break his AI. He'll just kind of float back and forth, but as long as you stay underneath him, Jigsaw can no longer attack you. Once the jetpack is gone, Jigsaw comes down to the ground and the real fight starts. Except given that he's in an Iron Man suit, you can't shoot him at all now. At this point he gains another attack, which is shooting this giant orb at you that'll take like half your health if it hits. The only way to damage him are to use these little remote explosives called rams. They basically work like C4 does in every other game. You press one button to throw it, then press it again to detonate it. The only way to get rams is to go to the various points of the arena where they respawn, or kill the white suit Yakuza that appear in the arena. The only problem with this is that you never use a ram prior to this. I mean, I don't even know what RAM stands for. Remote activated something, I would guess. So on your first playthrough, you really have no idea what the fuck a ram is and how you're supposed to use it. I thought they were some kind of jammer, so I would throw it at Jigsaw only for him to then shoot it and destroy it. I finally figured it out when he shot one too close to him and it exploded, damaging him. This fight also just takes so long because you have to run around farming rams while Jigsaw wanders around the massive arena looking for you. This boss fight isn't even hard, it's just kind of boring. Alright, now that I've talked about the mechanics of the game, I want to talk about the story and the levels. But before I get into each level individually, I want to give my kind of disjointed thoughts on the character of the Punisher in this game. So this game has a very lighthearted tone to it. Multiple characters like the Detective Soap and General Krikov are basically comedy characters. Enemies are constantly saying funny shit, and the Punisher himself cracks a one-liner each time he brutally murders someone in a special interrogation.
Sanitized for your protection. But he makes good mulch.
I think that's fine. I mean, the Punisher is obviously kind of a dark character, but he never really feels out of character in this game, despite the pretty wacky characters he interacts with. It actually shares that more lighthearted tone with the Punisher movie, and Thomas Jane, who played Frank in the movie, voices him in the game. I would say like 80% of the time his voice is completely fine, but the other 20% he just sounds like some guy, not really the Punisher to me. Think about Batman or Spider-Man and what you would expect their voices to sound like. I mean, both have had a shitload of actors over the years, but generally you just kind of know what Batman and Spider-Man should sound like. Thomas Jane just doesn't really sound like the Punisher should to me, if that makes sense. However, one thing I really do like about this game is that the enemies are absolutely terrified of the Punisher. They're constantly screaming things like, "We're all gonna die," and you'll hear dialogue where they're like, "Hell no, I'm not going out there, that's the Punisher."
What kind of wine you want? That broad. I'm dead.
It's really good, but with that being said, let's talk about the story and the levels of this game.
Daredevil. Yes, but the blind guy took them all out. 100 guys hopped up on MGH? That's what I'm saying. They all ended up in hospital or jail. But we face the Punisher, not Daredevil. We will all end up dead.
So when you start a new game, you see this cutscene of Punisher fighting Yakuza before being arrested by the police. In the actual game, it's essentially the police recapping all of Frank's recent activities to try to understand why he was there fighting those Yakuza. He's being interrogated by Detective Soap and Police Lieutenant Richtofen, who's generally a lot more serious than Soap is.
And lately, eh, Castle? How many people have you killed in the last few weeks?
Not sure. There were a lot of explosions.
Level 1 is called Crack House, and it's basically just your normal Punisher activities. I would actually call this more of a crack compound personally, but being the tutorial level, it's super easy and serves mostly as an introduction to the game. After Frank kills the head drug dealer in the house, he goes to leave only to almost get run over by someone in a car that he then tracks to an automotive shop. Frank alleges that it's a chop shop where they steal cars, kill the drivers, and then resell them once they've been made untraceable.
A charge the owner's lawyers vehemently deny, by the way.
This level is also super easy because it has the same crackhead enemies, at least in the first half. You meet this truck driver who swears he's only a driver and had no idea what was happening here, but later a receptionist tells you that he's actually one of the masterminds behind the shop, so you then have the choice to go and kill him.
Don't know what they do here. It's just a job.
They kill people, steal their cars, and sell the parts. How could you not know?
I really don't know. Talk to the truck driver. He seemed to know what was going on.
Mike, it's me, man. You are not gonna believe what just happened. I'm down at Duca's making a pickup and in walks the Punisher. Doesn't say a word, just opens up and Duca's guys don't stand a chance. Then he sees me and I just about wet myself. I tell him I'm just a driver, I don't know anything. He buys it, tells me to get out, and just walks away. You know what this means? I'm sitting on enough shit here to set us up for life. You gotta get down here and help me load this stuff up.
Halfway through the level, the enemies are replaced by Mafia guys who are a little harder than the crackheads, but honestly not by much. After fighting through the actual auto shop, Punisher catches the owner of the shop, which is where that scene I played in the intro comes from. Punisher learns that Bobby Nucci was running this place, then throws the owner into a car crusher. This level is the first time you see these enemies on mounted turrets, which are completely protected from the front, meaning you have to flank. These are super annoying on one specific section of a later level. The next level is Lucky's Bar. The intro cutscene shows us that Detective Soap was here waiting for a meeting with Bobby due to some kind of debt, but you won't have to worry about that for long. When you first start the level, the enemies aren't actually hostile, so you can chill for a minute and listen to them talk about Daredevil.
Hey, do you think Daredevil could take Sonny Corleone?
You dumbass lush. Daredevil is a comic book character.
Anyway, the only enemies on this level are the few Mafia soldiers in the bar and then Bobby Nucci in the back hiding behind a couch. It's really easy but super fun. After Punisher kills Bobby Nucci, his mom and the boss of the Mafia, Ma Nucci, go figure, hires Bushwhacker to kill the Punisher. Bushwhacker decides to lure Punisher into a trap by kidnapping his neighbor Joan and taking her to the zoo. So as you might guess, the next level is Central Zoo. This is actually my favorite level in the game. At multiple points you'll find Bushwhacker holding Joan hostage. You can't hurt him here, but if you shoot him once, he runs away. The first part of the level really just has you working through the visitor area and some back offices. Once you get to the actual exhibits, this level is just so sick. You get to fight the Mafia guys while hearing animal facts over the intercom. The special interrogations here are just insane too. You get to feed a guy to piranhas,
Pathways and
Hey,
enjoy
Tommy,
the
check
sights
out
and
these
sounds,
piranhas.
but try in small numbers.
sacrifice a guy on an Aztec shrine, impale someone with the help of a rhino, and use electric eels to kill someone.
The electric eel is actually an elongated fish.
The soundtrack on this level is also just super operatic.
Time you got here,
For
Castle.
your own protection.
Keep coming, Castle. Don't come any closer.
This game actually has a pretty wide variety of music, but both this level and the main menu have this glorious ass music. One of my favorite parts about this game, which it honestly kind of loses towards the end, is the level selections. I love how so many of the levels in this game just take place in super ordinary places, like an auto shop, or a zoo, or a bar, or later a meat packing plant. This level is great, and at the end you're offered a choice to pursue Bushwhacker or save Joan, who's suspended over a pit of piranhas. It turns out not to actually be much of a choice because Bushwhacker just blows up the hallway behind him, so you end up having to save Joan anyway. Level 5 is called Funeral Home, and it has the coolest opening of any level in this game. Ma and Eddie Nucci are having a funeral for Bobby, which Punisher decides to crash. To get the drop on them, he stashes Bobby's body in a trash can and hides in his casket. Ma and Eddie both end up leaving, Ma going back to their estate while Eddie goes into the attic, but you still get to pop out of a casket with an LMG and kill a bunch of people at a funeral. That's like peak Punisher shit right there. Now, did he have to hide inside the casket? Probably not, but fuck you, he's the Punisher. The rest of the level is pretty typical. You get to burn a guy alive inside a cremator, destroy a drug lab in the basement, and then get thanked personally by the mortician for putting all of his kids through college.
Sure. Don't shoot! I'm the mortician. I own this establishment. I'd like to thank you for all you've done for my family over the years. Your handiwork has put my 3 kids through college. Well, if you'll excuse me, I've got a mess to clean up.
The ending of the level has you fight Eddie Nucci, then throw him out of a window.
Any last words, Eddie?
My ma'll never rest until you're dead!
Next is Nucci estate, and it's time to get Ma herself. Except as Punisher tries to get into the estate, Bushwhacker blows up the floor underneath him and sends us tumbling down into these underground tunnels. You have to work your way out of the tunnels and into the actual estate, where you can hear Ma over the intercom getting more and more frustrated at her man's inability to kill the Punisher. Punisher says this insane line that for some reason didn't actually get voiced. It says, "Didn't know Ma could read, probably 200,000 copies of The Godfather." Anyway, in that library, Bushwhacker attacks Frank and you actually get to fight him this time. During the fight, he mentions that John Saint is looking for Frank.
Seen John Saint lately, Castle? He's looking for you.
John Saint being the guy who killed Frank's family, only to then be killed by the Punisher, presumably. Anyway, after the fight with Bushwhacker, Punisher rips off his own arm and shoots him with it.
You bastard! What are you doing?
Disarming you.
Then going after Ma in the rapidly burning down house. This section has a one-off mechanic where you have to shoot down sprinklers on the roof to put out fires. But once Punisher reaches Ma, he throws her out of her window as well. Next is Pier 74, and we're more or less back to typical Punisher activities. It's a dock ran by Russian mercenaries that the Nucci's use to import their drugs, and Frank is shutting it down. This is where you first fight the Russian mercs, including some with body armor. Halfway through the level, Punisher finds the Russians interrogating Black Widow.
Persuade this, comrade! What the hell are you doing here, Castle?
You're welcome.
I let them capture me, you fool.
Why?
A stolen Russian nuke is coming in by freighter tonight. I'm taking it back. Why are you here?
Just hosing down the docks.
Like I said, characters kind of just show up in this game. It's actually really fun. Widow reveals that the Russians are actually importing a stolen Russian nuke, which is why she's here. Now that seems a little above Punisher's pay grade to me, but hell yeah, let's stop a nuclear strike. You actually get to work with Black Widow for a couple sections of this level. You get a couple allies throughout this game, and honestly they're kind of useless in combat, but they will distract enemies for you. Punisher and Widow then go their separate ways for a while you destroy the drug boat with a crane. The two then reunite only for Widow to take a tank shell straight to the face and leave Punisher to destroy the tank all by himself. She's alright though, because once the tank is down, she gets back up to let Punisher know that he needs to raid a ship called the Igor Bolitsky tomorrow while she raids the other ship. One of them has a nuke on it. I would tell you to remember this interaction, but we never actually find out what happened to Black Widow's ship, and we'll never see her again in this game. The next level is the Igor Bolitsky, and I would actually say this is the first real spike in difficulty. Being a cargo ship, this level is mostly super tight corridors where if enemies catch you off guard with a shotgun, they're basically guaranteed to do a lot of damage. There's this really fun section where you're going through the crew quarters, and the captain orders his men to stay inside the rooms, but they don't, instead popping out right as you pass by their doors just in time for you to shoot them. The other notable part of this level takes place in the cargo hold, which is a huge area filled with a shitload of shipping crates, so you can't really see anything, meaning you spend most of the time in that section searching for enemies rather than actually fighting them. This level is alright, could be better but could also be worse. But after planting 2 bombs on the ship and saving 2 trafficked women, Punisher blows the ship up, which notably did not have any nukes on it. Like I said, we never learned what happened to Black Widow, but we know she failed over on her ship, meaning that General Krykov, the commander of the Russians, now has the nuke on Grand Nixon Island, a fictional island inhabited by those mercenaries. And he's planning on launching it at New York City, which again seems a little out of the Punisher's league, but we're already in this far. While Punisher gets ready to storm the island all by himself, he hears a knock at his door.
Damn, Joan must have made another batch of cookies.
It's the Russian, and this is level 9, Castle's apartment, which is just where you fight the Russian, eventually throwing him out a window. This level is super short, but I also really like it. Next is level 10, Grand Nixon Island, and this level is like a Call of Duty mission. It's really cool while also being very hard. Punisher dons a camo outfit, and this is the only time he actually paints the skull on his face, unfortunately. But you parachute onto the island with a sniper rifle. I know I said that the Yakuza are the hardest enemies in the game, and that's true. However, this level just throws so many enemies at you at once while having pretty rare checkpoints in it. It really does make you feel like one man going against a whole army. You first fight past a couple checkpoints until reaching a gate where you have to blow up a transformer. I don't know if this part is bugged or if there's just one very specific spot you have to stand in to go to the next section, but it took me like 3 minutes of walking around both playthroughs to actually get through the gate. Anyway, you then find out that Nick Fury is attacking the island too, although given that this was 2005, he's still white. Nick is a pretty fun character, he's kind of like a drill sergeant to Frank.
Need, why the hell are you here?
Sightseeing. What is S.H.I.E.L.D. doing here?
The same thing you are. Trying to stop a madman.
But he's just as useless as Black Widow when it comes to actual combat. There's this really annoying section where after fighting through a building, you and Nick get stopped by 2 mounted turrets in a row with basically no cover to actually let you flank the turret. The idea here is that you can get Nick to distract the turret while you kill the operator, but for some reason, which I can't understand why, Nick doesn't seem to like getting sprayed by bullets, so the second the turret operator shoots at him, he'll go back into hiding, meaning he immediately turns to shoot at you instead. Anyway, Punisher and Fury catch Krykov just about to launch the missile, where he says maybe the most insane line in this game.
Sir, the procedure takes time!
If that nuke isn't armed in 30 seconds, I'm gonna use you as a condom!
But he gets away before they can stop him. That guy is supposed to be Russian, by the way. Anyway, Fury tells you to destroy the nuke while he goes after Krykov, but those 2 things are in the same place, so we're really just splitting up for no reason. You then have a gondola ride where you have to snipe enemies both on other gondolas and on the ground trying to snipe you. Like I said, this feels a lot like a Call of Duty mission. At the end of the ride, we see a cutscene of the Russian knocking out Fury right under the nuke before he can stop Krykov from beginning the launch.
It's clobbering time! Favorite saying of King, Rodman of the Fantastic Four, big superhero in Russia.
We then have to fight the Russian, and I think I've said enough there, but after killing him you get to kill Krykov, and if you want, you can do a special kill that shoves him under the exhaust of the nuke. Punisher then engages the locking clamps of the missile without disarming it, meaning the Grand Nixon Island is about to become a crater. He then escapes with the unconscious Nick Fury in a plane as the island goes boom behind them.
I can't believe he let me live.
The police actually blame Frank for setting off that nuke, which is fair because he did do that, and it seems like Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. don't acknowledge their role in the whole thing at all. I mean, classic US government right there. Next up is Fisk Industries. Punisher believes that Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, was behind the nuke in Russian, so he's gonna shoot up his skyscraper and demand answers. This level also has a very cool opening. Punisher just walks right into the first floor of the skyscraper and starts blasting. Kingpin's guys are all wearing this really goofy outfit, but I think they share the same level of intelligence as the Russian mercs. I actually think this level would be a lot better if more of it took place inside like the office buildings of the skyscraper, because where it actually takes place is kind of boring. Most of it happens in this unfinished looking area, unfinished as in under construction, not in the game design sense, which is mostly just concrete walls. You encounter Bullseye pretty early on in the level, and Punisher drops a super hard line when Bullseye threatens him.
Room for you in my schedule. Get out of the way.
Or what? You'll scowl me to death? I don't miss, you know. Too bad you can't say the same.
Hard to miss a guy with a target on his forehead.
You go in to fight Bullseye one more time before reaching Kingpin's office and having the final confrontation with him, which ends with Punisher A. shooting him in the head, B. giving Bullseye a hug and forgiving him, C. killing him with his own knives, or D. throwing him out a window. If you guessed D, you'd be right. That's the third boss now the Punisher is killed by throwing them out of a window. After killing Bullseye, Kingpin himself ambushes Punisher. He actually looks great in this game, he's fucking huge. You don't get to fight Kingpin though. He tells Punisher that he wasn't behind any of this and instead someone else is moving in on his territory. He says that someone has been using Punisher to weaken his businesses so that they can then take his place. It's kind of funny to me that Kingpin thinks Punisher would care about that. Like, okay buddy, we'll just kill them all next. You don't get to fight Kingpin though because he runs away just as the Yakuza arrive on the top floor. These guys are called the Eternal Sun, and you could actually see a couple of them at Pier 74, but being the Punisher, we kill them indiscriminately. I'll be honest here, I find the whole Kreekov thing kinda weird, because if the Russians were under Kingpin's control, why would he tell this fucking guy to nuke New York City? Or maybe Kreekov was acting on his own accord, I don't really know. But Punisher has to clear the Eternal Sun out of Kingpin's office, and then take the elevator back down to the lobby, where we end up in a three-way, Punisher versus Kingpin's guys versus the Eternal Sun. This part is actually pretty hard. What you have to do is get to this side room where Punisher stashed some C4, then blow up the front door and escape. You have to wait 30 seconds for the C4 to go off though, which I spent cowering in fear. After this level is where esteemed lawyer Matt Murdock pops in to try to represent Punisher in his interrogation, but Frank sends him off.
Hold it right there. Anything my client has said without his attorney present is inadmissible. Mr. Castle, don't say another word.
Too late, Murdoch. Go home.
Mr. Castle, as your attorney, I strongly...
I don't need a lawyer. You're fired.
Mr. Castle, this is very ill-advised.
Objection noted and overruled.
There's actually a ton of Daredevil references within this game, which I'll have a theory about later. Anyway, you then unlock 2 more levels. Pier 74 Revisited is just Pier 74 again, but this time you fight Yakuza and you get joined by a couple soldiers from S.H.I.E.L.D. It's fine I guess, but the other level, Meat Packing Plant, is way more interesting. Meat Packing Plant puts Punisher in the middle of a fight between the Nucci Mafia and the Yakuza, and the Nuccis are definitely not winning. The objective of this level is to save 5 innocent workers throughout the place, then blow up a drug lab in the basement. This level has some of the most insane special interrogations, and there's like a new one every single room. A lot of them are, as you would guess, meat grinder related, however you can actually saran wrap a guy, which I thought was kind of funny. It's a pretty fun level, but after blowing up the drug lab we see a cutscene of Punisher talking to Officer Soap in an amazing disguise.
Disguise. Subtle. Inconspicuous.
Yeah, it might be funny to you, but I'm dead if they find out I talked to you.
Soap tells him that Yakuza are planning on attacking Stark Industries to steal some Iron Man tech. Soap also tells Punisher that it's John Saint, the mafia boss who killed Frank's family, who's behind all of this. He now has a horrifically scarred face from his last encounter with the Punisher and calls himself Jigsaw. Since Punisher hasn't gotten his invitation to join the Avengers yet, I'm sure it's coming. But we can't warn Tony Stark into sending to get into the building by going on a tour with Punisher's other neighbor, Spacker Dave. I guess nobody in this tour knows who the Punisher is because he shows up in the whole trench coat skull t-shirt combo, but pretty quickly into the level the Yakuza attack. I have mixed feelings on this level because on the one hand the setting is total sci-fi, which I don't really like for this game. I much prefer the more grounded levels. But on the other hand, it's a pretty fun level, and I actually like the fact that you started off with no weapons and have to continuously scavenge off the Yakuza. You can also work with some Stark guards along the way, although most of the time it's just you versus the entire Yakuza force. The fight culminates with the fight against the helicopter, but honestly Punisher's presence here didn't accomplish much as Jigsaw got away with an Iron Man suit. We then get that cutscene with Iron Man, but he never appears again. I guess he wasn't too concerned about a stolen prototype.
What are our losses?
Still sweeping the building, sir. Looks like at least 50 guards, 20 scientists, and a few tourists.
What were they after?
Some blueprints were stolen from design, and several pieces of iron tech armor are missing.
And where's the Punisher? I saw him in the middle of things.
Missing, sir. We're not sure why he was here.
But we do know he was here.
Castle knew something. Find out what it was.
Yes, sir. There was someone with Castle. Came on the tour with him and left with him.
And?
Well, sir, he stole some things from the labs. Paper clips, a hole punch, and some scraps of metal. Should I contact the police?
I need a drink.
In the police interrogation cutscene before the next level, we actually see Soap unlock Punisher's handcuffs, but you don't know that's what he did until the next level. Anyway, Punisher has decided to storm the Takagi building, a nightclub that also serves as the base of operations for the Eternal Sun. This level also opens with the enemies not being hostile to Punisher, which is kinda crazy when you consider that he's killed hundreds of these Yakuza by now, but whatever. You can overhear them talking more about Daredevil, which again, I have a theory about that. Anyway, this level is alright, but the goal of the first half is to interrogate a white armor Yakuza and force them to unlock Takagi, the leader of the Eternal Sun's private elevator. Once you break them and they agree to help you, you can let them go, but then they'll just cower in fear while enemies shoot at them. So my strat was always just to walk them over to the elevator nut to butt, because they're a lot less likely to die that way. The first part of this level is fun, but the second half is where shit gets hard. So when you take the elevator up and find Takagi in his office, he reveals that Jigsaw has basically stolen control of the Yakuza from him. The only loyal soldiers he has left were the ones he just killed downstairs and the few guards he has in this room. To get back at Jigsaw, he tipped off the police and got him arrested and then sent to Rikers Island. He still lost everything though, and so he accepts his fate of being killed by the Punisher. He asks you to do it with his family's sacred katana though, and if you do, his guards won't attack you. It matters pretty little in the end anyway, because once you kill him, an endless supply of Yakuza start spawning while you try to find your way out. These include a couple black and white elites, a couple normal Yakuza, and then one guy with a flamethrower. That group will respawn over and over until you first find the key to Takagi's office, then activate a secret passageway to let you out. That passage takes 4 minutes to open though, so you need to hold out against the Yakuza until then. My strat was just to camp in Takagi's office because then the enemies just trickle in one by one, rather than being able to surround you. Once the passage is open, you fight past another turret, and then we see the intro cutscene once again. Although this time we see a little extra, as we see Punisher specify to Soap to take him to Rikers Island.
Task force. Come on, please. You're embarrassing me here. Yeah, I remember.
As you might be able to guess then, the next level is called Rikers Island, and the Punisher is on a mission to kill Jigsaw before he escapes the prison with the help of the Yakuza. Right as the Yakuza attack, Punisher knocks out Officer Richtofen and gets on his way. The Yakuza cause a prison break in order to distract from themselves in Jigsaw's escape, so most of who you fight on this level are prisoners. Now if you're asking yourself about the ethics of killing people who are already in prison, just know that Frank isn't. I mean, he's not called a rehabilitator, is he? Anyway, this level also has you scavenging your weapons. Initially they're the starter weapons from the inmates, but later you fight Yakuza and can take their better weapons. The only real notable special interrogation on this level is when Frank takes a guy on death row and puts him in the electric chair. This level is actually pretty hard, specifically this one section of long hallways where Yakuza will attack you from pretty much every single angle.
You don't scare me!
Come on, tough guy!
But at the end of it all, Frank finds Jigsaw with the Warden of Rikers held hostage. He's already negotiated with the police below for a helicopter to escape in if he gives them the Warden in exchange. After defeating Jigsaw, Frank is just about to kill him until the Warden distracts him, allowing Jigsaw to pull out a gun and...
Jigsaw! This is Captain Batelli. The chopper's
So, what are you gonna do with Jigsaw?
Kill him.
Oh, please don't do that. I'll catch so much shit. He's in police custody.
Not yet, he isn't.
Jigsaw!
Have my word! Jigsaw! This is not the deal! Release the hostage!
Frank ends up escaping using Jigsaw's chopper and wearing his armor, dropping John Saint down to the police below. The ending actually goes pretty hard, but they decided to tease a sequel by showing Kingpin swearing revenge on the Punisher.
This is the final insult. An assault on my home must be avenged. If I let this stand, my enemies will see it as a fatal weakness. The Punisher must die, and at my hands.
Alright, so here's my theory. I think they actually wanted to make a Daredevil game rather than another Punisher one. You hear constant mentions of Daredevil in this game and how badass he is, and the Daredevil movie just came out a couple years before this game's release. So I think they actually wanted to make a Daredevil game and have him going after Kingpin, and then probably just have a couple Punisher cameos throughout the game. Obviously that game never came out, nor did the Punisher sequel, and Volition would go on to make a bunch of Saints Row games until eventually closing their doors in 2023. But that was The Punisher, a really fun game that captures comic book energy better than most superhero games I've played. Thank you all so much for watching.